Last Sunday, I started talking about vision, but began talking about it from a different point of view because, yes, this is the year of 2020, and yes, I believe that this is a year that is highly associated with vision. It is also important that we don't leave out certain critical components of vision that impact vision, because you cannot have the discussion of vision in isolation. There are other aspects of vision that are important and essential if we're going to see our visions and our dreams come to pass. One of those critical components I talked about last Sunday, and it was about context. And I discussed with you how you cannot have vision in the absence of context, because context brings into the conversation all of the broader details of a situation that have the potential to impact what you see. For example, and I talked about this on Wednesday night, if I would use myself for example, that God has given me a vision for 2020. There's some things that I'm believing him to accomplish. There's some things that I'm trusting him that will come to pass. However, I'm not looking at or praying about 2020 in isolation. I'm praying about 2020 in context with the next 10 to 20 years. Because God gave me a plan for my life that sees me all the way through to when I turn 50. And so I can't make plans out of the context of what he's already shown me years ago based on where I'm supposed to be when I turn 50. Everything has to be viewed in context. Your life has to be viewed in context. And I mentioned this on last Sunday, but don't let anybody judge you without context. Because even the things that you find yourself in that are unsatisfactory to you, you even have to view them in context. And people will look at you and they will make certain statements or judgment calls about where you are and who you are, and they don't understand the context of your situation. So they look at what you wear and don't even know what you're saving up for. Because you've chosen not to wear your wealth, but you've chosen to have something to pass on to the next generation. People will call you mean, and they don't even know how many times you've been hurt. People will call you standoffish and in high society, and they don't even know how you were raised. You were raised in isolation, and so you really don't know how to have strong, healthy relationships, and so there's some things you're still learning. Always view life in context. And all of our life situations have a certain context to it that we have to have accompanied with our vision for the future. There is another critical element and component to vision that I want to talk about today, and that's called perception. Perception. You cannot have vision in the absence of perception. And I know many of you would attempt to get ahead of me and assume that vision and perception are the same thing, but they are in fact not. If you would allow me to define for real briefly what perception is, it is the proper interpretation of presented information which transforms knowledge into understanding. And so what vision does is brings what I see into my mental faculty. However, vision does not provide understanding of what I see. It just provides the focal point. It doesn't explain what I see. It doesn't interpret what I see. It just uses my sensories to bring certain aspects of information into my existence and reality. And then it becomes up to me to properly interpret what I see visually and transform what I see from knowledge into understanding. Once I see it, I have knowledge of it. But God doesn't just want us to have knowledge of what we see. He wants us to understand what we see. If you don't believe me, take the preacher's word for it in Proverbs chapter 4, verse number 7, where it says, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. But then he ends it by saying, and with all thy getting, get understanding. God doesn't just want you to see your future. He wants you to be able to understand where you're going so you can make the right decisions along the way. Many of us, we have a lot of knowledge, but we don't have a lot of understanding. I got people who say they know me. I know you're a pastor. Pastor Lacey, you're a pastor. I know you're a pastor. And they may very well know me, but they don't understand me. You got to be careful with that, because some of y'all getting too close to folk that know you. I'm going to preach to myself in here this morning. And you give too much information, too much private stuff to folk that know you. And some of the folk that you're giving information to, although they know you, they don't understand you. And if they did understand you, there are certain things that you did that wouldn't make them mad. Obviously, you don't understand me, because if you understood me, you'd already give me grace in this situation, because you know what I've been through. God, I wish I had somebody in here. That's how God is so quick to forgive you, and he's so quick to overlook some of the things that you've done. Why? Because he stepped down from heaven and took on the form of humanity and lived life as Jesus, so he wouldn't just know his creation, but he would understand us. And Hebrews says, we have not a high priest that cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted as we are, but without sin. He understood us when he became Jesus. God, I wish I had 12 of y'all that would holler. I just wish folk would understand me. Just wish folk would understand me. I ain't mad at nobody. I just need a moment. Let me talk to this side over here. Y'all sleep on me. I wish folk would understand. I'm trying. You act like I ain't even trying to get my life together. I'm trying. I wish somebody, if I'm talking to you, just holler back and say, I wish people would understand. I wish. One of the hardest things about being you, and I'm going to say something real quick, I'm going to say who's going to catch it, but one of the hardest things about being you is you want people to know what it's like to be you. But the issue is folk will never know what it's like to be you, because being you is what makes you special. The moment folk understand what it's like to be you, there's no longer anything rare about you. But I wish folk would understand. And that's how perception comes into the conversation, because perception helps us understand what we see. Everybody is talking about vision, but nobody is talking about perception, because two people can have a vision of the same thing, but we have a different perception. I wanted to have this on the screen, but we're having technical difficulties in the back. But there's a very famous image of two people standing on the opposite side of the number 9. And the person that's on the left side of the number 9, he understands that it's a 9. But the person that's on the right side of the 9, he's looking at the 9 and he swears up and down it's a 6. And so watch this. They're looking at the same thing and still don't agree with each other. And that's how perception works. Yeah, I see what you see, but my perception is different. And so what I'm believing God for in this season is that you don't just have a vision of your future, but that you have the right perception of your future. I believe that if anything was important to Jesus, it should also be important to us. And perception was important to Jesus. And you'll find this in Mark chapter 8, because it's in Mark chapter 8 where Jesus was talking to his disciples after he had just fed the multitude with 2 fish and 5 loaves. And after he had fed the multitude with 2 fish and 5 loaves, he had an encounter with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and he turned around and he said to his 12 disciples, he says to them, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now, Leaven, those of you who don't know, and I'm hurrying here, is a word for yeast. We call it yeast, but in Hebraic culture, it was referred to as leaven or leaven. And leaven was a metaphor for doctrinal or practical sin. In other words, leaven, whenever Jesus would refer to leaven, he was referring to the things that make sin rise within us, the same way yeast makes bread rise when you bake it. Y'all still with me? And so Jesus is using this metaphor of leaven or leaven, however you pronounce it, to say to his disciples, if y'all don't do nothing else, stay away from what the Pharisees and the Sadducees been teaching, because if y'all follow their teachings, you're going to end up having the things that they practice rise within you, and it's going to take away from you completing the will of God for your life. Look at your neighbor and say, be careful who you let teach you. Be careful who you let teach you. Be careful who your model becomes. And here's the problem with the disciples. The disciples heard what he said, but they didn't understand what he said. And so they start looking at each other and say, he mad at us because we forgot to bring bread on the last trip. Ah, God, you know how folk misunderstand everything that you're saying, but don't have enough courage to come to you for clarification. And so they would rather just assume rather than getting an understanding. That's what the disciples did with Jesus. And Jesus perceived within himself of what they were thinking. And he says to them in verse number 17, you perceive not, neither do you understand. And then he further says, yeah, you have eyes, but you see not, and you have ears, but you hear not. In other words, he was saying to them, you heard everything I just said, you saw everything I just did, and you didn't understand none of it. And there's some folk in here this morning that have been seeing miracles happen all around you, yet in spite of what you see, you still fearful, you still got doubt, you still afraid of your future. Give your neighbor a high five and say, neighbor, you saw it, but you didn't understand it, because if you understood it, you wouldn't be afraid in what you're going through right now. Somebody holler, Lord, give me understanding. He says, y'all perceive, but y'all don't understand. And then when you understand the Greek text in these particular words, it takes you a little bit deeper, because in verse 17 of Mark chapter 8, the Greek word that Jesus uses for perception is the word noeo, which refers to the mind and an individual's ability to comprehend and understand. Now, that's the Greek word he uses for perceive. The Greek word he uses for understand is the Greek word suname, which means your ability to put together as if assembling a puzzle. So he says, you perceive not, which means you don't understand. Then he says your understanding is like taking the pieces of a puzzle and being able to put them together. And so what he's suggesting to us is you have the pieces of the puzzle, he's telling his disciples, but you don't know how to put the pieces together to bring the full picture of what I'm trying to do in your life. And that's the same thing that happens to you and I as you go about your life day by day and situation by situation. Everything you go through and every revelation that God gives you is another piece of the puzzle to your life. That's vision. When you see the piece, when you see a glimpse of your future, when you see what school you're supposed to go to, or when you see what degree you're supposed to get, or when you see what car you're supposed to drive, or when you see, anybody in here seen your future yet? You ain't seen all of it, but you seen a piece of it. Who am I talking to in here? Where here's the revelation. You've seen the pieces, but you're just like me. Even though I've seen the pieces, I'm struggling to put the pieces of the puzzle together to make the full picture of what God is doing in my life. And that's where perception comes in at. Because when God gives you the ability to walk not just in vision, but to walk in vision accompanied by perception, you're able to take the pieces of the puzzle that he gave you about your life and properly put them together so you can make the right decisions to come into what he showed you. I need somebody in here who understood what I just said to open up your mouth and shout, I'm about to put it all together. No, you didn't say it like you got the Holy Ghost. I want you to open up your mouth and shout so loud you scare the Negro next to you and say, I'm about to put it all together. I came to prophesy to about 12 of y'all who've been confused in your last season that God is not the author of confusion, which means he's not going to leave you in a confused place. So in this season, God is not just showing you stuff. He's showing you how to put stuff together. He's showing you how last year couples with this year. He's showing you how the last relationship you had is going to help you for your next relationship. He's showing you how every job you worked at is preparing you for your office that you're about to get. Give somebody a high five and say, I'm about to put it all together. All the hell I've been through, all the sleepless nights, all the folk that left me, all the folk that walked away from me, all the stuff that didn't go my way, all the trouble I've been through, it's about to make sense. Why? Because he makes all things work together. Somebody holler one more time, I'm putting this puzzle together. I'm putting this puzzle together. I feel it in the Holy Ghost, y'all. I don't know who I'm talking to, but this thing is really about to come together. This business is about to come together. Your family is about to come back together. All that arguing about a little bit of stuff they used to do. Give your neighbor a high five. Say, we about to squash all that. We just about to remember we kin folk, and we gonna party like kin folk, and we gonna get along like kin folk, and even when we get into it like kin folk, we gonna turn right back around and be drinking Kool-Aid together like nothing ever happened like kin folk. Is there anybody in here that would shout back at me and say, let's put it all together? Because you're not just seeing, you understand. You have perception. You have an understanding of why certain things happen. Man, I'll tell y'all, and I'm going to get ready to get out of here, but there is nothing that'll make you shout like understanding. There is, if you really want to have church by yourself, be sitting at home in the dark just thinking, and all of a sudden some click. Oh, God. I thought I was going to have more help than that. Be at your office walking around work, and then all of a sudden God just gives you revelation, and you say to yourself, oh, that's why they had to leave. That's why they had to walk away. That's why they had to. It's understanding. It's understanding that I'm looking for in this season of my life. And in 2 Kings chapter 6, that's the problem that we have in the text. The problem is there is an absence of understanding. There is sight, but no perception. And here's the thing that's going to really make some of y'all holler, because in this text, it is not the central character that has the perception problem. It's his friend. 6 of y'all gonna have church with me. The rest of y'all gonna look at me like you're crazy. I'm gonna try it one more time. I said in this particular text, it is not Elisha, even though Elisha is the main character in the text that has the perception problem. In 2 Kings chapter 6, and I'm gonna show it to you in the text, Elisha can see well. And he does not have just vision, but he also has an understanding and perception of everything that's going on around him. But he is on the mountain with his servant, and the problem is his servant can't understand what he sees. And when you are on the mountain, and thing you got to understand about mountains in Scripture is that mountains are not only a metaphor for success, but they're also a metaphor for spiritual battles. Jesus had a spiritual battle on the mountain. Moses had a spiritual battle on the mountain. Elijah had a spiritual battle on the mountain. See, everybody is trying to attain success, but what folk don't understand is that every time you get success, it always tag teams with a spiritual battle. You can't have success and then not have a fight along with it. Give your neighbor a high five and say, neighbor, the reason I'm fighting like I'm fighting is because I'm as successful as I am. Some of y'all thought y'all were failures, and you didn't even realize you got it going on, because folk that got it going on
always have to fight. All my life I had to fight. And the reason I got to fight is because I'm so successful. Well, if you don't believe me, holler at my homeboy Biggie Smalls. More money, more problems. Every time I get another blessing and every time I get another miracle, it seems like I got another fight. But that's because the mountain is not just about success. The mountain is about your battle. I'm talking to you, holler yes in this house. I'm fighting because I am successful. You're not fighting for victory. You're fighting because you got the victory. I feel like preaching to somebody in here. You ain't trying to get the victory. The devil is attacking you because you already got the victory. 12 of y'all open up your mouth and shout, I already got the victory. Oh, God. Already got the victory over cancer. I already got the victory over my money. I already got the victory over my mind. Say it. I'm going to make this make sense and I'm going to go home. The devil. This is how the devil fights. Many of you know I'm a big sports fan, and I watch boxing. And one of the things that you'll learn about boxing is ain't no point of fighting somebody that's under you. At least one of you got it, so let me see if I can get everybody else. I said, the way boxing works is if you want to climb the ranks, you got to fight somebody that outranks you. You gotta beat somebody that outranks you. And see, that's how the devil works. The devil ain't coming after nobody that's under him. The devil always tries to attack people he's under. You still miss your shot. So let me say it like this. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, what you got to understand is you got the devil under your feet. And he's only attacking you because you're already on top of him. You already got. He's trying to take your position. He's trying to take your spot. But I need somebody. Oh, God. I said I need somebody to give somebody a shot and say the devil can't have my spot. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I was made a little lower than the angels. The devil can't have my spot. High five, 3 people say, you can't have my spot. That's my spot. That's my job. That's my marriage. That's my wife. That's your husband. That's your car. That's your house. That's your degree. Take back what the devil tried to take. Yours. Elisha rather, is on the mountain. And he's on the mountain in a spiritual battle. But the problem is, he's on the mountain in the spiritual battle, and his dog can't see. I don't care what you do, New Life. Don't you go into battle with folk who can't see what you see. Y'all don't want to have church. See, y'all asking God to give you folk that got your back. I'm asking God to give me folk that got my sight. Because folk that got your back but not your sight won't have your back for long, because y'all will never see eye to eye on everything. And the only reason they got your back is when you agree with them. I want you to high five your neighbor and say, neighbor, I know you like me, but do you see what I see? Because truth be told, you really just attracted to my gift. You're really just attracted to what I do and not who I am. But I need folk around me who, even when you don't got my back, you see what I see. Because when you see what I see, you'll always be. I prove it to you since y'all don't like this kind of preaching. There was a man named Jesus who just messed my mouth all the way up. Because this man named Jesus has 12 disciples for 3 years. And I'm trying to do the math on this because Jesus has 12 disciples for 3 years, but only one was at the cross. See, I know it's taking y'all the time to understand what I just said, because I told you it messed my math up too. Because I'm trying to figure out 12 minus 3 don't give me 1, 12 times 3 don't give me 1, 12 divided by 3 don't give me 1. So how in the world does a man have 12 disciples for 3 years and ain't but one there when he really need them? It is because for 3 years he had 12 people who had his back, but none of them had his sight. I don't just want people who got my back. I want people who can see what I see. Because when you got people on the mountain with you that see what you see, y'all can be beefing and get over it quick. Because what y'all trying to do is more important than your feelings. Ah, God, I wish I had some help up in here. And so that's why Elisha went to God and said, God, I got a friend on the mountain with me. He can see, but he don't see what I see. And so in order for God to move in Elisha's life, he prayed. Somebody shout, you got to start praying, baby. And you're not just praying for you, but you're praying for everybody around you. And say, God, open their eyes. Good evening, New Life. May the Lord bless y'all real good. But I stopped by to tell somebody, and I stopped by to tell all y'all that in this season of your life, what God is doing, he's not worried about cars, houses, and clothes, but he's opening people's eyes. I need somebody to throw up holy hands and say, God, open my eyes so I can see what I'm looking at. Because what I'm looking at, I see it but don't understand it. Give your neighbor a high five and say, neighbor, you getting ready to understand what you've been looking at for 6 years. Didn't make sense last year. Didn't make sense the year before. Didn't make sense in 95. But in 2020, you're going to understand what you look. I'm done. I promise y'all I'm done. Elisha's servant is on the mountain with him, and he's looking at Syria's army surrounding the city. And he gets afraid because all he can see is what he's looking at. But he don't understand there's always more to what you're looking at. Look at your neighbor and say, what you're looking at. I know you're looking at your bank account, but there's more to your money than what you see. I know you're looking at the doctor's report, but there's more to the doctor's report than what you see. Whose report you gonna believe? There's always. If y'all having church with me, holler back and say there's always more to that. There's always more to that. There's more to you getting fired than you getting fired. There's more to that repossession than the repossession. There's more to the divorce than the divorce. There's more to getting laid off than getting laid off. There's more to the acheness that's in your body than what's in your body. Sometimes God will make you sick just to make you shout. Because when you was healthy, you didn't know how to lift your hands. But now all of a sudden, there's always more to what you're looking at. So Elisha says, since my homeboy can't see what I'm looking at, I'm going to pray for him. And he asks God, he says, God, open his eyes so he will see. I'm going to give y'all this take home. Whether you do it or not, that's on you, but I want you to go home tonight and I want you to pray for everybody in your circle. I want you to pray for everybody you call boo, boss, friend, or whatever the word is for y'all look click. And I want you to tell God, God, open the eyes of everybody around me so they can see what I see. And anybody that does not see what I see can't be with me. I had to rap because I got my biggest shirt on this morning. I said, whoever can't see what I see can't be with me in this season of my life. God, open my boyfriend's eyes. See whether or not he gonna still be my boyfriend. Open my girlfriend's eyes to see whether or not I'm gonna buy this ring. Open my wife's eyes, my husband's eyes to see whether or not they're really my spouse. Open my church's eyes to see whether or not they're really following their leader. Open everybody around me's eyes so I can see who's really on my team. When was the last time you prayed for the folk you connected to? This season of your life, if you're going to fast and pray for anything, fast and pray to be connected to folk who can see. I'm going to tell you why this man couldn't see, and I'm going to get out of here. I promise y'all this is the last point I'm going to make. I hope I'm helping somebody. But see, the reason he could not see what Elisha saw was because of his maturity level. See, some of y'all got friends at the same age, but not the same maturity. God, y'all not gonna have folks. Y'all graduated together, was in homeroom together, went to college together, was probably roommates, but y'all still not on the same level of maturity. Notice that the Bible in this particular text, you'll see it around verse number 17, calls Elisha's servant a young man. And he is strategic about calling him a young man because he wants all of us to understand that his maturity level is not where Elisha's spiritual maturity level is. And when you're connected to people who are not as mature as you, they can mess around and become a hindrance if you don't pray for them and ask God to open their eyes. Because this man is looking at the camp around him. He's looking at Syria's army surrounding the city, and he gets afraid. But Elisha never gets scared. Elisha never blinks twice. He never budges. He never even thinks twice about the Syrian army encamped around this mountain. Why? Because Elisha's maturity level is greater than that. Lacey, translate that. He's seen this before. And when you've seen certain things before, certain things just don't scare you. There are folk looking at what you're going through right now and wondering how you hadn't hung yourself yet, how you hadn't slit your throat yet, how you haven't committed suicide yet, how you haven't walked off the job yet, and they don't understand. You're too spiritually mature for that. Translation, man, I done seen this before. As a matter of fact, I ain't just seen this, I seen worse. Can I get 12 people to help me go home and just shout back at me if you've been through what you're going through, and not just been through it, but been through worse than this and survived? Would you just testify to the person next to you by shouting and give God a praise and say, my God has brought me through worse than this. And if he's brought me through worse than this, ain't no need of me being scared right now. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, you've been broke before, broker than this. You've been sick before, sicker than this. You've been confused before, more lost than this. And if he brought me out then, why are we scared now? I'm closing, y'all, I promise you. He sees the army around him, but he don't know what he's looking at, because all he sees is Syria's army. Because he hadn't been through the type of battles Elisha has been through. So whenever Elisha goes through a battle and he sees the enemy's army, the enemy's forces are not the only thing he sees. He is so used to God showing up for him. God showed up for him in chapter 1 when he and Elijah was on the mountain together. God showed up for him when the prophet lost his axe head and he recovered it in the lake. God showed up for him when the widow's husband dies and the creditors came knocking at her door, and Elisha had to tell him to go in your house, and whatever's in your house is going to take you for the rest of your life. God showed up for him when the prophet got sick. God has showed up for him time and time and time again. So Elisha is not just used to seeing the devil's army. Elisha is also used to seeing God's army as well. He never goes into a fight without seeing God's angels on his side. And the reason he doesn't panic, and the reason he doesn't cry, and the reason he doesn't complain is that although his servant sees one army, Elisha sees two. And Elisha sees that God has sent invisible help. Help nobody can see unless they're praying like you. Can I get out of here, y'all? I want to tell somebody who came in here this morning in a battle that the enemy's army is not the only one in this situation. But there's an army you can't see that's fighting on your behalf. You got angels that have already been sent ahead of you. to prepare the way for you. This issue that you're going through right now, you don't even realize that God fixed it before you found out you had it. But you can't see that with just your eyes. Which is why you can't just have vision. You got to have perception. It's easy to see what's against you. But when God allows you to take what you see with your eyes and understand it spiritually, you begin to see help the devil can't see that you got. He says, after God opened the servant's eyes, he looked up and said, he saw chariots of fire. And as scared as he was of the attack that was around the city, the help that God sent outnumbered the attack that was against him. But he couldn't see it. He couldn't perceive it. He couldn't understand it. Because he let fear set in. He's looking at this army. And he's looking at it only through the physical. And he forgot that we are not physical beings taking a spiritual journey. But we're spiritual beings taking a physical journey. There is more working for us in spirit than there is in the physical. So I'll leave you with a question, New Life, that I want you to ponder as you go home. Do you know what you're looking at? I know what you see, but do you know what you're looking at? I know what the bills that you got stacked up on your business table at home. I know what you see, but do you know what you're looking at? I know what you see on the doctor's report, but do you know what you're looking at? I know you can see everybody who left you, but do you know what you're looking at? That's the question I leave you with. That's the question I want you to ponder, because God can show you more than what you see. Take your prayer life to the next level and start every day with prayer and end every day with prayer, and watch God show you what you're really looking at. I had some things happen to me last year would have broke the average individual. I'm so glad I ain't average. Some things have happened over the last 5 years that would have made the average person quit and walk away from everything. Until I had to stop and pray, say, God, show me what's really going on. Because I'm looking at what's happening, but I don't understand it. And then I began to shout, even in the midst of my pain, because God was helping me understand what he was doing in my life. I want to say this to somebody as I open this altar, but there's some bad that happened to you. And as much as it hurts right now, you're going to be able to look back at this. Say, oh, that's why that had to happen. They had to go. They had to leave. They had to stop. They had to quit. I had to get fired. You know, some of the greatest businesses all got started after the person that started them got fired. Come here, Steve Jobs. How you get fired from your own company? How you get fired from the job you started? How you the best player that ever picked up a basketball and you didn't even make your junior team, Jordan? Jordan said, I tell you what, I never missed that shot again. How you one of the most dominant centers the league has ever seen and couldn't even make your high school team, Shaq? How you scoring 30 and 40 points and can't even shoot free throws? Y'all keep talking about what I can't do. Let me go over here in this paint and show you what I can. I may stop myself from getting one, but you can't stop me from getting two. Some of the worst things that ever happened to you can be the best thing that ever happened to you.